90 days, 3 months in, and yet no end in sight. How much further do you think this conflict will go?
Well, I think it's certainly not going to end anytime soon. You have Russian advances, very, very slow ones, but still enough for them to persevere in it. I think there is also a lot of kind of political pressure on Putin to continue with the war until there is some kind of clear gain. On the other hand, for Ukrainians as well, I think they are kind of emboldened by the fact that they're still fighting, that the Russians have slowed down, and they've also been emboldened by all the huge support from the West, including military ones as well as economic sanctions. So I think as long as both sides still think they can win it, the fight will go on.
And how do you think this will shape the future development, the future evolution of this conflict?
It's very hard to say, but I think the underlying logic is still the same, that both sides will try to push for a victory, and it's really a matter of how much more resources either side have. I think there are obviously limits, both to the Russian side in terms of its armed resources, its economic hardship, but I think what's been kind of underestimated, and obviously the Ukrainian authorities wants to have a big picture, but they also kind of in difficulties in the sense that the army is being reduced in terms of the most battle-worthy troops are being lost. Mariupol, there are 4,000 almost surrendered, there are others killed. Similarly, things not going terribly well for them in terms of Russian gains in Donbass, but also all the infrastructure is being destroyed and across Ukraine. So it's all very difficult circumstances for both sides. So at some point, hopefully this will stop, but I don't see it's happening anytime soon.
Indeed, President Vladimir Zelensky, Dr. Titov, asking for something like $600 billion to rebuild Ukraine. And I think it's safe to say that that is $600 billion and counting, because as each day goes by, there's more destruction, more things need to be rebuilt. Can I ask you, this is a real opinion question, I think now. Vladimir Putin, before February the 24th, perhaps would have gone down in history as a very Machiavellian leader, someone who was willing to do whatever it took in order to get what he wanted for his country and perhaps even for himself. But since February the 24th, how do you think the events of what has happened in Ukraine will shape how future generations look at Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think this is his biggest call ever, the Ukrainian invasion of Ukraine, and he will be judged accordingly. I think there is no question that in Ukraine and in the West, he's condemned universally, and there is no kind of debate or any kind of discussion here. But in terms of how it's perceived in Russia and his longer-term trajectory, I think it will still be kind of determined by the outcome of the war. Basically, if he still can gain some material benefits in terms of territory and future status of Ukraine that is not part of NATO and so forth, then the Russians might see it differently from the rest of Europe and European allies.
Do you think even so, given, the Ukraine Defense Ministry says 28,000 Russian soldiers have been killed so far, Western sources bringing that down to 15,000 Russian soldiers killed. Nonetheless, it is a huge loss that Russia's sustained so far, and of course it's all on Putin.
Yes, so there's certainly a huge kind of setback for the Russians, and I think Putin was expecting much quicker victory and so forth. But I think, I guess in his mind, they're kind of playing for much higher stakes, kind of long-term security, and also kind of correcting the historical justice as it's perceived by Putin's circle in terms of regaining Russia's age-old lands and so forth. That's the price, I guess, they are at the moment willing to pay. The question is whether the people in Russia more generally are accepting those losses and so, or they think it's enough. The key here, of course, is that the moment, as long as they're fighting with the the professional army, as long as they don't send the conscripts or declare general mobilization, this still will be seen as a relatively distant war. And the exact figures, obviously Ukrainians put up huge figures and so forth. The Russians deny them, so the public might not be aware of the scale of losses anyway. So there are all these different aspects, difference in perception, difference of priorities, as seen from inside Russia, and seen from different, circles, and population more general.